Liberia is going through tough economic times, with inflation rates going over 28%. The staggering mismanagement and corruption have scared off foreign investors, and frustrated donors are withholding funds. Many Liberians are fed up and recently expressed their anger in the Save the State protest, with more protests planned. When he came into office, President George Weah promised to tackle poverty and corruption, but he is yet to deliver on his promises. For Liberians, the country's current state is a reminder of the dark days of the 14-year civil war. Could this mean President George Weah is losing his popularity?
Eh bien, Lynette, si on s'en tient à la mobilisation des partisans de l'opposition dans la rue ces derniers jours, plusieurs répondront oui, en plus de cette crise.
Precisely, Lynette, if we stick to mobilizing opposition supporters on the streets in recent days, many will say yes. In addition, as a result of the economic crisis and soaring food prices, nearly 15,000 civil servants have still not received their salaries.
That's correct, Ruth. And Joshua Mersave is a senior policy analyst for Africa and the Middle East, and he joins us now to talk about the situation in Liberia. John, it's always good to have you in the program. So what would you say? Would you say President George Weah, who was expected to bring a wave of hope, has failed Liberians?
Well, I would say that President Weah has been a disappointment. There's no doubt about that. Now, he's still only a year and a half into his term, so I don't want to definitively say that he's been a failure to his people, but the early returns are very poor. He ran on an anti-corruption platform. He was viewed as untainted with the Americo-Liberian elite that had dominated the country really since independence and which were oftentimes mired in corruption. And I think that there was a lot of hope around his ascension and that he could be different from the previous regimes and the previous ruling elites who had been so corrupt and had pillaged the country. Unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to get any sort of handle on the corruption. The people around him appear to be very corrupt. There are even questions about him personally, where there are rumors of him building 50-some-odd houses in a compound, and he claims it's his own money, and he is personally wealthy, of course. But it's still not a good look for someone who promised to clean up corruption.
And from various media reports, tens of millions of dollars have gone missing. Ambassadors have also expressed concern that the government is stealing aid money. What does this say of George Weah's government?
It says that it hasn't done nearly enough to tackle this devastating problem. Corruption kills, literally, in some ways. Corruption makes it difficult for hospitals, for instance, to get the drugs that they need, to stock them, and to treat patients, which is exactly what's happening right now in Liberia. Civil servants are going unpaid. So that's not solely due to corruption, but corruption exacerbates that problem. And the government of George Weah and those around him need to take a deep look and frankly, be patriots and put the good of their country above their own interests. And unfortunately, it seems, again, that this government hasn't done that. Now, it's still new, as I said, only a year and a half in, so perhaps there can be some turnaround. But time is already running out for them, as the street protests have shown. People are very, very angry, and for good reason.
And John, what do you think Liberians can do beyond the protest movements that they have been staging to push their government to listen to their concerns on corruption?
Well, it's clear that there are engaged, concerned citizens. Again, there have been huge protests out on the streets led by the Council of Patriots, which is essentially an umbrella organization of opposition groups. And so I applaud that engagement and that pressure on the government demanding that they clean up some of these problems. They must remain nonviolent. That's absolutely critical. The last thing that Liberia can afford is violence on either side. So let's hope that remains the case, that everyone remains peaceful, even as they press their demands. The citizens, they really have to hold their government accountable. And that's hard to do in these societies. It's hard to do anywhere, but it's hard to do in Liberia as well. But they have to remain dedicated and committed. They have to demonstrate to the government that they will not accept business as usual, that there must be a change. And then I would say honest people have to get into government. Honest, competent people have to run for election, get elected, and then remember that they're there to serve their people, not to serve themselves.